Okay, so just a couple of brief things. I know I always say that, and I always mean it, including this time. So the first thing is I'm going to surprise all of you by saying something in favor of Donald Trump. So I'm watching Morning Joe today, and and I was also watching this Daily Show. What was his name? Killed. I forget the comedian who was on, and he was making fun of Donald Trump, and he showed Donald Trump giving a speech at Gettysburg, and Donald Trump was saying something like, "It wasn't real uh, smooth. It was just basically, it was a terrible moment, but it was also, in many respects, a great moment. And I go there and I look around and I see, and then they when they were making fun of him, they trailed it off of him saying da 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 blah 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 blah, and then they were all making fun of him and laughing about this, and that kind of missed. This is one of the reasons that liberals have a problem when it comes to Donald Trump. They miss what he is to so many of his supporters, which is a person who sounds like they do. And when he talks that way, and he talked the way he did about Gettysburg, and it wasn't very eloquent, it certainly wasn't a Kennedy-esque speech full of ringing phrases and and powerful language, but he sounded like one of the folks, and he was saying things. I knew what he was saying. Lincoln talked about that. People will little nor long remember what we say here, but they will never forget what they did here. And what they did there, if you've studied the Battle of Gettysburg, and ironically, one of the best descriptions of what happened at Gettysburg, as well as their entire Civil War, was written by Karl Marx, who was a big fan of Lincoln and a big fan of the United States, although you'd never know it to listen to the way they denigrate him all the time. But he talked about Gettysburg and the terrible suffering, but also the significance strategically of that battle. And that's what Donald Trump was trying to say. He wasn't articulate, but he was talking the way most people talk. And when Morning Joe and all those people in there were ridiculing, Colbert was a comedian, were all ridiculing him, I'm saying to myself, this is why people don't like liberals. You talk down to people. You talk about them like they're morons. You make fun of Donald Trump, who talks the way they do. We're not all lawyers. We're not all polished speakers. Ironically, most lawyers are not polished speakers. I don't think glaring exception. But enough about me. This is about Gettysburg. No, it's not even about Gettysburg. So that's something that Democrats need to learn to realize is we've lost a lot of support among the kind of people who used to support us, particularly people like members of union households, the working stiff we used to call them. We've lost all the bigots, thank God, in the South. They all went to the Republicans, and good riddance to them. But we've also lost a lot of the blue collar workers, people with high school educations. Many people with high school educations are very educated. I mean, they're not formally educated, but they're educated. Like Harry Truman, he didn't have any advanced degrees, but he was, next to Jack Kennedy, probably the most learned historian in the White House that ever occupied the White House. So it's like you got to be careful about talking down to people. I mean, you talk down to Donald Trump. This is why he says when they put him in all of these trials, they're not trying me. I'm Jesus Christ. They're trying you. When they nail me to the cross, that's because they're going after you. And that resonates with people because they hear intellectuals talking down about Trump when they don't see him talking down to them. And they don't have any problem with the way he talks, the things he says, and the silly jokes he makes and so on. They like that. So when you put Trump down that way, you're also putting down his supporters, the people that Hillary Clinton called the great unmentionables, or whatever the hell she called them. I know she didn't call them that. She called them the deplorables. But I like I don't always like the. Sometimes things are, you make a point better by lying about them. No, I didn't just say that. And don't tell me you're going to show this clip to other people and say that's what I said, because I'll deny that I said it. And you just use artificial intelligence. And incidentally, I noticed that artificial intelligence initials are AI, which are the same initials for anti-Irish. I'm just saying, you can draw whatever conclusions you want to from that. Being an Irishman, I'm sensitive to that. So, That brings me to the topic of Israel. And I'm going to say something in support of Israel, which I don't often do. And that is, the Israelis have been saying, apparently, they're not going to take their terrific defense that they played with the golden shield or dome or whatever the hell they call it, the super dome, that defense where they not a single missile got through, that they can't just take that as a win. They also have to show that they can strike back, that they can go in the offense. Now you might be saying to yourself, if you're not real sophisticated, that's most of you, shut up, Francois, you're not sophisticated either, that the why do they need to go on offense when they've got this terrific defense? Nothing got through. Well, here's why. Israel is losing support, it's hemorrhaging support with the American people. And I don't care, every time I hear some talking it, even when they're critical of Israel, if it's a politician, they always start off by saying, now, of course, our support of Israel is not wavering, and they are our most important ally in the Middle East, which is nonsense. We're their ally, they're not ours. They never do it. They're the only democracy in the Middle East, yada, yada, yada. So, like, nothing else matters, just Israel. The rest are just, like, if they're enemies of Israel, they're terrible people. And if they're not friends of Israel, well, we can just ignore them. So, and even if they're friends of Israel, we can ignore them because Israel is what it's all about because they have a democracy. Well, if it's a democracy, it's not working really well because they've got a guy in as their head guy who is apparently despised by the vast majority of the people who supposedly are responsible for him being in power because under their system of government, the people don't elect the prime minister. They don't do that in England either, but they certainly don't do it in Israel. So it's not a great democracy. It's nothing like our democracy. That guy wouldn't last 5 minutes in our democracy. But that's what they've done, and that's what they say all the time. We're there for the defense of Israel no matter what, and we're ironclad in our support of Israel, however we criticize what Israel is doing in Gaza. Well, you can say that all you want, politicians. But I'm telling you, speaking for myself and people I know who think the way I do, relatively conservative, moderate, middle-of-the-road Democrats, not a bunch of kids getting their info from Tic Tac, with all due respect to Bill Maher, but people who are educated. I was around well before Israel was a country, and long before Bill Maher was born, or the rest of you people who vocalize the same nonsense he does where Israel is concerned, and that is that we do not owe Israel a defense at all. We owe them nothing. We've given them hundreds of billions of dollars. We've bought them an Air Force. We bought them an Army. We bought them a Navy. We bought them tanks. Everything they have, including the Iron Dome, they got from us. And that's been with bipartisan support. And you know why? Because the Israeli lobby has contributed equally to Democrats and Republicans to the tune of multiple millions of dollars. So many of these uncontested congressional districts bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby. Somebody in I think it was that one from Michigan, said, if you want to know why Israel gets all the support, follow the Benjamins. And everybody was outraged. Look at this, is another trope, Jews and money and Jews and influence. Yeah, it happens to be true. It doesn't matter whether it's a trope or not. She's dead right. Anybody who follows IPAC at all knows exactly what I'm talking about. The trouble is they're losing Democrats. They're hemorrhaging. They still have those Republicans because they don't think for themselves. But Democrats do. I don't say all Republicans don't think for themselves, but the solid majority of them don't. And I say that from years of unfortunate experience watching Republicans, dealing with them. They don't think for themselves. By and large, the great MAGA people, they don't. One guy said, "They're the people that grow your tomatoes." Well, I don't eat tomatoes, and that's why. So the only time I ever used tomatoes was in grammar school. We used to sneak them into school and then throw them at each other. But, that was in my past. I was young. I was 6 years old. I didn't know better. I've matured since then. I stopped doing that by the time I was 30. I did it all through law school, too. I went to law school in Indiana. That's why I went to grammar school, too. That's what people in Indiana do because there's a lot of farmers there. We have a lot of tomatoes. And I'm not even going to go there anymore. It's a ridiculous sidelight for you to even be watching. You start to turn me off as soon as I start talking about tomatoes or tomatoes, depending on how you say it. So, there we sit. The people who grow tomatoes think that Israel must be great because the Republicans say it's great, and whatever Trump or Republicans say, that's what we're going to think and do. And I've seen that time and again. Look, Trump flip-flops all over the place, and they flip and flop right with him. But Democrats, by and large, better educated when it comes to the issues. I'm not saying formal education, but that's also true. And those of us who are well educated in the issues follow them all the time, and I do it to the point of almost an obsession sometimes. Shame on me. But if I didn't, you would be getting this great information. So, to the extent that you follow this stuff, you understand that those of us who've been following Israel for a long time are about had it with Israel. And fast forward, and it doesn't take long, fast forward a little bit, and all of a sudden you're going to find Democrats who think like I do are going to be in charge of the Congress, they're going to be in charge of the Senate, they may be in charge of the White House, and they're going to say to Israel, no mas. And of course, the Israelis will say, huh, what does that mean? And all of you are saying, what does that mean? Well, those of us, such as I, who are bilingual, I'm actually trilingual, I also speak some French, and I know 2 words of Chinese, and I know 2 words in Swahili, or at least I used to. Maybe I've forgotten those. Samba was one of them. Anyway, but enough of that nonsense. So those of us who are bilingual know that no mas does not mean no ketchup or no mayonnaise. It means no more. And if the Jews in Israel lose the support of the Democrats' base, which is not unlike the Republican base, which is way out in right field, the Democratic base is people like me, moderate to conservative Democrats. They lose that base, and as the younger people are coming up and getting more moderate and conservative, when they start having to pay taxes, they're still gonna retain their anti-Israeli bias based upon what's going on in Gaza right now. And if that happens, you know what's gonna happen to Israel's Golden Dome, or Iron Dome, or whatever the hell they call it? It's gonna go away, because the Iron Dome is a bunch of rockets. It's not a piece of metal. It's a bunch of rockets that we pay for. They don't get those rockets, they don't have a Golden Dome. And you know what's going to happen then? Next time Iran decides to shoot several hundred or maybe a few thousand rockets into Israel, they're not going to be able to shoot them down. They will hit in Israel, and Israel can't withstand that, and Israel will be destroyed. So, Mr. Netanyahu, be thinking about what you're doing. But this is why he's saying, I've got to send a message to Iran that we're not relying on the Golden Dome. We have our own ability to hurt you. And so even if you got these missiles through, we would send our missiles and our planes and everybody else out to attack you. And you don't have a Golden Dome, Iron Dome, to protect yourself. We do. The Palestinians don't. You don't. We do. So that's their only way of really saying whether we got have the continued support of America for our Iron Dome or not, we can still hurt you back. So don't attack us, even if we lose all those missiles and all that money from America. Because he's seeing that. He's not totally stupid. He understands what's going on in this country, even though the politicians apparently don't. He does. And he understands that there is a revolt going on in the Democratic Party and with the American people as it relates to support for Israel. And once Israel loses the support of the American people, and the politicians follow suit, Israel is going to go away because they can't possibly defend themselves against all these other countries in the region who would love to see Israel disappear. So the irony is, by reacting so over the top to the attack in October of last year, what Israel has done is alienated so many Arab nations that were prepared to do business with Israel. They like Israel's economic model. They like the fact, and I've worked with some Israeli when I was at Intel. I had a number of my clients who were Intel engineers, brilliant people, great people to work with. Israel has an awful lot going for it, other than this constant attempt by the religious right in Israel to expand as far as they can from the river to the sea, and for religious reasons. So they want to have that whole thing and say, this is the Holy Land that was given to us by, what that was, Mo something. Mo says. Oh, Mo says. I think that was a feature in the New York Times with some guy named Mo Greenberg, and it was called Mo Says. And because he was Jewish, and people misinterpreted his name, and they got around to saying Moses. And so now people are saying Moses, and they look to see what Mo Green had to say in his column, and that's where you get this whole thing about Moses gave, God spoke to Moses, and Moses gave the whole thing to the Israelis, and yada yada yada. Even though Moses never got into the Promised Land, that was up to Joshua, who went in and slaughtered all those civilians in Jericho. Sound familiar? Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that. I don't know how I get off on any of these tangents. Thank God none of you listen to me. Your minds would be rotted. Ugh. Not that they're not already. So, bottom line is, Israel has to play that game because Netanyahu played right into Hamas's hands. He's gotten to the point where he's alienated the rest of the world for sure, and a big chunk of America, and that's continuing. And it doesn't matter how many people say, oh, that's anti-Semitism to criticize what Israel is doing. Oh, it's anti-Semitism to say Israel should just go away. That's all anti-Semitism, and that's nonsense. It's not anti-Semitism at all. It has nothing to do with disliking Jewish people. It has to do with disliking what the Israeli government is doing to the people who live as their neighbors. So that's the risk that Netanyahu is running. It's the risk that Israel's running, and those people who say they're friends of Israel should listen to people who are saying, be careful, Israel, you're about to lose your base of support in the United States, and when that happens, you're going to stop existing. So think about it, Netanyahu. You might want to, I don't know if he watches this or not. If he doesn't, that would explain why he's making all of his mistakes. Maybe he should start, and then he might not make all those mistakes and doom Israel into the ash heap. So, on that brilliant and funny and happy note, I'll see you later. Bye. How do I turn this? There it is. Bye.